Tuesday edition of PFT PM. It's draft week. We'll have plenty of draft coverage at profootballtalk.com and also each weekday morning on PFT Live in advance of the big event, which is coming on Thursday night. But today, we're 2 weeks removed from the publication by the New York Post of photos of Patriots coach Mike Vrabel and former athletic reporter Dianna Russini. The photos, as I've said many times, are what they are. The statements issued by Vrabel, Russini, and by The Athletic are what they are. And it's up to people to make their own conclusions about whether or not there's any daylight between the photos and the characterizations of them. Now, Vrabel hasn't said anything since the statement that he provided to the Post. And among other things, he called the situation laughable and said it doesn't deserve any further response. The Patriots had a pre-draft press conference last Monday. Vrabel wasn't involved in it. In fairness, the schedule that the team put out in March didn't mention that he would be there. It only mentioned VP of Player Personnel Elliott Wolf. But still, there had been nothing more from Vrabel. He had provided the statement to the Post, and he had disappeared. And the expectation was he would talk to reporters again during the draft. Most teams do a daily availability after round one, after Friday night, rounds 2 and 3, and then at some point on Saturday, the final day of the draft. And Tom Curran and I spent some time on PFT Live this morning. Obviously, Tom covers the Patriots for NBC Sports Boston. We tried to project when we would next hear from Vrabel. Given the way the Patriots have handled this, we assumed there wouldn't be anything until Vrabel speaks during the draft. I thought maybe he would issue a written statement and say that's all I have to say about the matter and leave it at that. But they ultimately made, I think, a very astute PR decision because the team is back. The offseason program has begun. And they were going to make players available to reporters today. We see that from time to time. It'll be a handful of guys at the podium answering questions. Well, they're presumably going to get some questions about Mike Vrabel. Has he said anything? What has he said? How do you feel? Is it a distraction? The mere fact that players would be asked about it underscores the fact that it is a distraction. So the Patriots made the decision to put Vrabel out there today before any of the players spoke and provide a statement. The statement is just a couple of minutes, and I think it's important in order to best analyze it and so that we're all on the same page. We need to hear the entire statement. So here's the full statement. I'll have some comments about it on the other side.
Let me first begin by saying thank you. Thank you for your patience that you've shown in a personal and private matter for me and obviously everybody involved. I know that that's not easy for you, and I respect that, and I appreciate your efforts in doing so. I understand I could have addressed you guys sooner, but it was important to me to have a conversation with the players, which I did yesterday, very candidly, as we began our off-season program, which everyone is excited to be a part of. Stacy had mentioned the players' availability, and it was never my intention to have them speak to you or address you before I did. And so I asked him to come today and to talk with you. I also don't want to take away from our, the draft, the weekend of the draft. This is an important time for us, our organization, and the excitement and the joy that those players are going to have that we bring onto our football team. They're starting an amazing journey, one that should be celebrated as we welcome them onto our team. With that being said, I've had some difficult conversations with people that I care about, with my family, the organization, the coaches, the players. Those have been positive and productive. We believe in order to be successful on and off the field, you have to make good decisions. That includes me. That starts with me. We never want our actions to negatively affect the team. We never want to be the cause of a distraction. And what I those are comments and questions that I've answered for the team and with the team. We'll keep those private and to ourselves. Care deeply about this football team, and I'm excited to coach them. I also know that I'm going to attack each day with humility and focus. And what I can promise you is that my family, this organization, the team, the staff, the coaches, everybody, our fans, most importantly, will get the best version of me going forward. And that's what I know, and I'm excited to do that. But I wanted to one, just address this and thank you for your patience in dealing with the private and personal matter.
And that's the extent of the comments. I've seen some criticize the statement as basically being a 2-minute word salad in which he said nothing. And you could say he said nothing, but he also said everything. When you consider what the initial reaction was from him, from Russini, from The Athletic, this is laughable, this is nothing, doesn't show the proper context. That was what Steve Ginsburg, the executive editor of The Athletic, said. There was clearly something to the photos that justified Vrabel using terms like personal and private matter, that he's had difficult conversations with people that I care about, that the team needs to make good decisions, and that starts with me. You never want to be the cause of a distraction. So without really admitting to anything, he's acknowledging, when you look at the full content of what he said, that there's something about the photos which he dismissed initially. There's something beyond the photos that caused him to have difficult conversations, that caused him to say, we don't want to make bad decisions on and off the field, and that includes me, and that he never wants to be a distraction for the team. Now, he wouldn't talk about what he said to the team, and I respect that, but here's the reality. We're at a stage of the offseason where the rosters are as big as they're going to be. Now, they don't yet have the draft picks or the undrafted free agents, but you're going to have guys in that room who may or may not tell someone what he said or what any players may have said in response to it. You're going to have guys who get cut at some point. You may have players who choose to talk about it on or off the record. And who knows how accurate it'll be. We know how that goes. Different people have different interpretations of events. But even if Vrabel's not going to say anything, other people in the room may choose to. And I'm not saying they should. I'm not saying they will. I'm just saying they can. So that's another way this story can get another injection of life and continue. And again, we're 2 weeks in. Things don't last 2 weeks in today's world. Sometimes they don't last 2 days. He did what he had to do to protect the team. He did what he had to do to take accountability for the situation. And one of the things I said early on, how do you ever have any authority or credibility with your players when you're trying to tell them not to create distractions when you've created one that you've yet to fully address? Something Michael Hawley said last week on NBC Sports Boston, and we revisited it on PFT Live, where he's the co-host every Friday, most Fridays. This Friday, Sims will be in because it's the day after the draft. But most Fridays, it's Michael. Michael said he's going to have to talk to the players. You can stiff-arm the media. You can't stiff-arm the players because you're the leader. You're the captain. You're the guy who is telling them what to do and what not to do. And do as I say, not as I do no longer flies. They used to tell us that when we were kids, when they were walking around with cocktail glasses and cigarettes and swearing in the house. Do what I say, not what I do. Can't do that. Definitely can't do it as a football coach at a time when you want to be sure your players make good decisions and that your players don't create distractions. You need to deal with it head on when you haven't made a good decision and when you've created a distraction. And again, he didn't go into any details, but he said what he said, just like the photos. The photos are what they are. The denials were what they were. The statement today is what it is. And I think it says plenty. And it does Dianna Russini no favors because her position all along, unwavered, unchanged, has been there's nothing to see here. her original statement to the New York Post. The photos don't represent the group of 6 people who were hanging out during the day. Like most journalists in the NFL, reporters interact with sources away from stadiums and other venues. And then when she submitted her resignation letter last week, she blamed the uproar in the aftermath of the photos on, quote, commentators in various media who have engaged in self-feeding speculation that is simply unmoored from the facts, end quote. She also said she was resigning not because I accept the narrative that has been constructed around this episode, but because I refuse to lend it further oxygen or to let it define me or my career. Well, Vrabel supplied plenty of oxygen today. And it really puts her in a tougher spot. She's walked away from her job. We don't know what her next move is going to be. He's unscathed. The NFL isn't looking into the situation. The Patriots, by all appearances, have circled the wagons from the get-go. The PR decision that was made today is a smart one. The original PR decision that was made by whoever made the decision, Vrabel, Russini, someone with the Patriots, someone with the Athletic, the crisis communications expert who was retained by Russini, and maybe a different one who was retained by the Patriots, somebody made a bad decision to issue statements that took a very hard line, that these photos mean nothing. And those statements failed to properly anticipate the way that reasonable people would react to the publication of the photos. It's that simple. And it's always important for any organization when something happens that creates a problem. As you're figuring out how to deal with it, you better be able to take a step back and understand how it's going to fly and how people are going to react. It's not enough to just say, nothing to see here, because there is something to see. And what people saw, generally speaking, was different from what Vrabel, Russini, and Steven Ginsburg originally had to say. We wouldn't be here 2 weeks later. Vrabel wouldn't have given that statement today if their initial assessment of the situation and what it would take to put out the fire was accurate. The article from Ben Strauss of ESPN, which I don't think ESPN promoted the way it could have or should have, and it does invite scrutiny as to how aggressively ESPN won't just report on sensitive matters involving the NFL and its teams, but will showcase the reporting, spotlight the reporting. It may just be we're going to check the box and we're going to stick it over here, and we're not going to bring any attention to it. Strauss's item had a lot of stuff in there, a lot of new stuff, a lot of compelling stuff. And then the late Sunday, early Monday item from In Touch that was picked up by Yahoo Sports that the Patriots reportedly tried to kill the story. You put it all together and, yeah, Vrabel had to do something. And he did it on Tuesday. And for him, it could be the end. We move forward. Draft is coming. It's a positive time. It's a happy time for the team. That's what he's going to focus on. He's going to do his job. He's going to work hard. He's going to learn from it. Learn from what? We don't know. Learn from whatever. And the net result for Russini is, I believe, this is my opinion here, when you consider the position she's taken so far and what Vrabel said today, she is damaged by this. And it's going to make it harder for her to get back to a position where she's reporting on the comings and goings and the inner workings of the NFL and its teams. Now, there may be some other platform, podcast, whatever. But as I said, and as the headline for the end at PFT explains, he did her no favors with his statement that was issued today. All right, let's pivot to one other topic. Since Sims wasn't on PFT Live today, I had a chance to ramble on about a few things, but something that I thought of after the show. I was talking to 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland about the draft. And, last year the big story was Shedeur Sanders and his free fall from possibly top of round 1 all the way to the middle of round 5. And on Friday night of the draft, during rounds 2 and 3, it occurred to me that given how far Shedeur Sanders had fallen, maybe he should go back to Colorado for another year. Or maybe go to a different program. There was the idea that he'd go to North Carolina, get a year with Bill Belichick. Use that as the springboard to try to get drafted higher this year. And the point is, and obviously there's always going to be the naysayers who don't understand the bigger picture. The point is, because so many NCAA rules are antitrust violations on their face, the fact that the NCAA would initially say, well, you can't come back once you enter the draft class. You can't come back once you've been drafted. No. They allowed James Naughty, who was drafted by the Detroit Pistons in 2023, 4 years of eligibility at Baylor last December. I was at the game in Morgantown where he was playing Baylor against WVU in late January. He's back. He's playing. And he was drafted. So last year, Shedeur could have done it. Quinn Ewers could have done it. He was drafted in round 7. Pull your name out. Pull your name out before you're drafted. That's the better way to do it. Pull your name out before you're drafted. Hope you don't get drafted, because the problem is, and the NFL has planned for this outcome. The collective bargaining agreement makes it clear that if a player's drafted and then goes back to college, the team that drafted him holds his rights in that slot until he comes to the NFL. And then they have him just like they had drafted him in that spot in the year that he comes to the NFL. And I mention that because we don't know what's going to happen with Ty Simpson, the Alabama quarterback who recently said he could have made $6.5 million in NIL money for one more year of college football, and he decided not to. He's a guy who is potentially a first-round pick, but there's no guarantee. Let's say he doesn't get picked in the first round on Thursday night. He's got 18 hours to think about it, to make a plan, to make a business decision. The best part about this new world we're in with college football, the players can make business decisions. And even though Shedeur Sanders and Quinn Ewers made the business decision last year to not try to go back to college, Simpson can start working the phones. The player taken in the first round, or in the first spot, of the second round of the 2025 draft, made $2.1 million on average under a 4-year rookie deal. What would be out there for Ty Simpson? Probably hard to get the $6.5 million because the teams move on to other players, money gets committed. But if all of a sudden Ty Simpson starts calling around, his agent starts calling around, what's out there? Maybe they can get some money together. Maybe they can do it quickly. And maybe Ty Simpson says, don't draft me. I'm out. I withdraw from this process. Now, the problem is somebody could take a late round flyer on him and have his rights next year at that very low amount. That's the risk he'd be taking. But it's an option that's available. It's a business option that he could take advantage of if he wants to. And that's the best part of this. It doesn't matter what a guy chooses to do. It's that it's now on the radar screen. And I feel like somebody's going to do it, unless and until the college football muckety-mucks get their way and the federal government gives them a lifeline and cleans up the mess that was made by decades of corruption, decades of denying the players not just a fair share, but any share, under the idea that, well, the NCAA says we can't. Well, you created the NCAA to institutionalize antitrust violations. All the universities locked arms under the umbrella of the NCAA, and these rules enabled them to say, sorry, we'd like to pay you, but we can't. So until there's a major change in the way things currently work, There's a chance one of these players is going to say, hey, I'm out. And you can have a player who has a strategy going into it. And it could be as simple as, if I get taken in round 1, I'll go to the NFL. If I don't get taken in round 1, I'm going to activate my escape hatch back to college football. And for all we know, Ty Simpson's already got a plan in place. We don't know. It would be smart to have a plan in place if he's not content to come to the NFL as anything but a first-round pick. I'll go to the draft. I'll go through the extended job interview where I get poked and prodded and asked a bunch of questions and have to go out and perform. Got to compete at the scouting combine. And then we'll see where I land. And if I don't go in the first round, maybe I'll make a business decision to go back to college football. I don't know that he's going to do it, but I think he's selling himself short if he doesn't at least think about it, if he doesn't get drafted in round 1. And I think one of these days a player is going to do it, unless the Hail Mary pass to Uncle Sam creates the solution that college football could easily create for itself by embracing collective bargaining and having a nationwide union and having the same kinds of rules that apply to NFL players. You get an antitrust exemption if all the different schools come together under one bargaining unit with one group of employees. They don't even want to call them employees. What the hell are they? What are they? So, something to keep an eye on round 1. If Simpson isn't taken in round 1, what happens from 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern time or thereabouts on Thursday night until 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern on Friday? At a minimum, you got to have the conversation. At a minimum, you got to explore what's out there. And I think the smart move would be to have already done that, to have plan B on the tee and available in the event that that's what he decides to do. All right, that's it. Just 2 topics today, but both are fairly meaty, both very different, but both discussed in the ongoing run-up to the draft. It's just 2 days away. We don't have the countdown clock on here. That's on the morning show. You'll see the countdown clock tomorrow. Trust me, it's getting closer and closer. We'll get you ready for it at ProFootballTalk.com. Cris Sims and I will be talking about it on Wednesday and Thursday morning, and then Friday, full breakdown of round 1 of the 2026 draft. Thanks, as always, for some of your time. We'll see you again real soon. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.